What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of the 7th studio album by the hard rock and alternative rock band Stone Temple Pilots. This is their first release since 2010, another self-titled album 2010's was as well, and their first since both Scott Weiland passed away, the original vocalist for this band, and also since the passing of Chester Bennington, who had since moved on from the band to return to his duties at Linkin Park, but it's still tragic nonetheless. And it kind of sent the community of Stone Temple Pilots fans reeling because they lost two people that had been connected deeply with this band in such a short time span. Now with this new record, they did obviously find a new vocalist, and it's somebody that I find to be a very worthy replacement. Not that I'm a huge Stone Temple Pilots fan, but come on, Core is essential listening, especially for any rock fan out there. After Scott Weiland being booted from the band and then passing away, and then Chester Bennington parting on good terms and then passing away himself, the band was left to fill some pretty big shoes, and I think they got it right here with the replacement of Jeff Gutt. You might know that name from competing on the US edition of the X Factor. He competed in 2 different seasons, actually finishing in 2nd place in the season that he competed in a few years back, and he was kind of a big deal. A lot of people were talking about him, and I had heard the name before, and then I put it all together when I saw that first live performance of Stone Temple Pilots performing their song Meadow. And it just all made sense because I don't watch the X Factor, but I had seen some clips of him competing, and I thought that he was really talented, especially his rendition of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. His performance on this album, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people. He has a powering voice, one that definitely channels Scott Weiland, but not one that tries to be Scott, if that makes sense. He definitely pays an homage to him by his performances here and the way that he styles some of his vocals and the way he's able to just really belt out some of these notes, but like I said, it's not a replication. Gutt used to be in a nu metal band called Dry Cell, and while I'm not familiar with the majority of their material, I did like what I heard when I went to go check it out before this review. You could tell that the vocals were one of the shining examples of why he would go on to do bigger and better things than that band. Not any hate towards them, but seriously, he's moved on in a big way. And on this self-titled album, the second self-titled album, I have to make clear, I think that he really comes through with some great performances here, and the album is able to channel a balance. It's able to start off heavier with some of these tracks like Guilty, Middle of Nowhere, and obviously the fantastic single Meadow that I just cannot get out of my head. I was hooked after hearing the live performance, forgot about the track and the fact that there was an album coming out for a while because I forgot to save it to Spotify, but once I reconnected, once I started listening to this album, I was sold all over again. This is an explosive track with some great guitars, some moments that remind me of some of the best of Stone Temple Pilots and why I liked them in the first place. Meadow is a fantastic track. And like I said, the album opens up on a bit of a heavier leaning note, and a couple of those tracks come back to back, and another one of my favorites comes just before one of the slow tracks. It's track number 5 called 6-8. This one has some smashing drum rhythms in it, and a very nice guitar groove that I'm honestly kind of addicted to at this point. I don't know why, but that's one of the tracks that I just keep coming back to and playing over and over again. Stone Temple Pilots fans that want something that reminds them a bit more of the Scott Weiland era are going to be a big fan, I think, of tracks like Roll Me Under, and some of the others like Guilty, and even Just a Little Lie that I already talked about. Just a Little Lie is another one there that really gets a nice groove, although I think the guitar solo on that track and also Never Enough are way too similar, and that's one of my complaints here. Sometimes the instrumentation just feels a bit too samey, and the production also kind of collapses on itself, making some of these tracks feel a bit flat. Although there are some exceptions to this, I would say the second half of this record is much more melodic and kind of introspective in a way. Starting with track number 6, I Thought She'd Be Mine. Thought She'd Be Mine is something that is very reminiscent of a timeless feel in music. How many of the songs of the 80s and the 90s and even the 2000s could be really played in any situation and in any place. And this is kind of a reflective, pondering track on the one that got away, so to speak. And Jeff Gutt on this track really has a nice vocal performance, and I would dare say it kind of packs a little bit of an emotional punch, and that's something that I didn't expect going in, and that's why I have to say some of the tracks here really surprised me. I really have to praise The Art of Letting Go for having such a nice guitar performance on it. It's a little bit slower, a little bit more vibey and melancholic, and they have these waxing and waning effects to them that kind of give a lingering sting of summer disappearing or something like that, and having to move on from a certain situation. And honestly, on this track, I feel like it's one of Jeff Gutt's best vocal performances, and it's moments like this that remind me of why they saw the talent in him and why they hired him for this job. I think what a lot of STP fans need to understand is the fact that they just wouldn't throw anybody in the pilot seat, so to speak. They went with somebody who they felt in their gut would be a worthy replacement. And honestly, I think moments like this really nail it down and kind of cement it for me as to why they chose him. And I think that more people need to get it through those thick skulls that unfortunately Scott Weiland and Chester Bennington can't come back. So why don't we do the next best thing? Why should the band have to quit just because they lost one of their members if the other members are still passionate about putting out music? You wouldn't blink twice if the guitarist disappeared and they replaced him with somebody else. More than likely, some bands, obviously the Chili Peppers for example, they will never get over the fact, the fan base that is, that Josh Klinghoffer has taken over for John Frusciante, and there's always going to be comparisons. But with a lot of bands, if the bassist, the guitarist, the drummer gets swapped out, nobody says, oh, it's time to end the band. But the vocalist disappears, and for some reason, everybody's just like, well, it's time to call it a day. That's not fair, I don't think. Mini rant aside, I do have to say that I find a good handful of these tracks to be mediocre at best. A lot of them feel kind of safe, and production-wise, like I said, they're not that thrilling because I think a lot of the guitars and the drums are just kind of crunched down, and not that they feel synthetic or processed or anything like that. They just don't have that big swing that I feel like a lot of their earlier stuff did have. Now, obviously, they're at a different point in their career, and they're working with different people and that sort of thing. This record was self-produced, and that was actually the same thing as their self-titled album, which they really had to fight their label Atlantic for. But I have to say, the self-production here, I'm not exactly sure what's missing, but there's something that's not standing out to me. Some of the tracks that come to mind for me are like ones that come towards the end of this album, Good Shoes, even pieces of Finest Hour, which I do like. I honestly do like the idea of that song. It's just that I'm not totally sold on it. And then even other cuts like I already mentioned, Just a Little Lie and then Never Enough, they sound a little bit too similar in the guitar department, and I just don't find them stretching out as much as I feel like they could, pushing themselves towards something new, or even just channeling the heights of like things that they had previously accomplished. Tracks like Meadow do that well. The self-titled album by Stone Temple Pilots is most definitely worth checking out. In fact, I'd say it's even better than their last self-titled album. That's just my opinion. It's not as great as some of their earlier stuff, but it's definitely seeing them kind of routing their course to something that I can be kind of excited for, and I was kind of taken back by some of these tracks and surprised at how much I like some of them. But that's just me personally. I'm gonna go with a 3.5 out of 5 for the new self-titled album by Stone Temple Pilots. What did you guys think though? Sound off in the comment section down below. Please drop a like on this review to show support for the channel, and subscribe if you're new. If you'd like to support my videos not only on this channel but beyond ARTV as well, please donate on Patreon at the top link down below, or else the annotation over in the corner of your screen. If you want to see another alternative rock review, tap right here, or another recent video I posted on the channel right over here. Connect with me on social media at all of these links you see here in the description down below, and other than that, I'll see you very soon for more videos right here on ARTV.